What do you do when the woman your son loves wishes you dead? I was 75, surrounded by balloons and a half-eaten chocolate cake, the kind I'd always loved, when I heard her. My daughter-in-law, Karen, leaned toward my son, her voice a venomous hiss under the clink of wine glasses. I hope this is her last one. The words sliced through the chatter, sharp as a knife through my chest. I froze, my fork hovering over the cake, the candlelight flickering in my peripheral vision. My heart, still stubborn after all these years, thudded hard. Karen's eyes didn't meet mine, but her lips curled satisfied, as if she'd just checked a box on some cruel to-do list. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. And in that moment I decided I wasn't done living. Not by a long shot. The dining room smelled of melted wax and my rosewater perfume, a scent I'd worn since I was a girl. My granddaughter Lily sat across from me, her teenage awkwardness buried under a forced smile as she pushed a small, wrapped gift my way. "Happy birthday, Gran," she said, her voice soft but genuine. My son David sat beside Karen, oblivious, his hand resting on hers like it always did. He'd always been blind to her edges, the ones I'd seen sharpen over the years. I'd raised him to see the good in people, but maybe I'd taught him too well. The room buzzed with the usual birthday noise. Clinking glasses, forced laughter, but Karen's whisper cut through it all. A poison dart meant to stay secret. I didn't confront her then. I didn't scream or throw my plate. I smiled, cut another slice of cake, and let the moment pass. But inside something shifted. I wasn't just Evelyn, the sweet old widow who baked cookies and knitted scarves. I was Evelyn who'd survived a war, a broken marriage, and a heart attack at 68. I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. The party dragged on, the air thick with unspoken tension. Karen played her part, refilling drinks, her laugh too loud, her eyes avoiding mine. I watched her, cataloging every glance, every fake smile. She'd always been polite to my face, too polite, the kind that felt like a mask. But I'd seen the cracks before. The way she'd sigh when I offered to babysit Lily, the way she'd rearrange my kitchen when she thought I wasn't looking. Small things, petty things, but they built a wall between us. And now this. A death wish whispered at my own birthday table. I wondered how long she'd felt this way. How many times she'd smiled at me while imagining my end. The thought made my skin crawl, but it also lit a fire in me. I'd spent years being the good mother-in-law, swallowing my pride, biting my tongue. No more. As the guests left, I hugged Lily tightly, her warmth grounding me. "You're my favorite," I whispered, and she giggled, unaware of the storm brewing. David kissed my cheek, his usual distracted affection, and Karen offered a stiff, "Happy birthday, Evelyn," her voice dripping with rehearsed sweetness. I nodded, my smile as false as hers. The door closed, and I stood alone in my quiet house, the balloons sagging in the corner. I poured myself a glass of sherry, sat in my armchair, and started planning. Karen thought I was frail, a relic to be endured until I conveniently disappeared. She was wrong. I'd lived through harder things than her resentment. If she wanted me gone, she'd have to face me first. The next morning I woke with purpose. My knees ached, my hands trembled slightly as I brewed my coffee, but my mind was sharp. I'd always been a planner, meticulous, the kind of woman who kept a calendar color-coded and a pantry stocked for emergencies. This was no different. I started small, gathering information. I called David, casual as ever, asking about their plans, their life. "How's Karen holding up with work?" I asked, my voice all honey. He rambled about her long hours at the law firm, her stress, her late nights. "She's been tense," he admitted, and I filed it away. Tense. Good. Tense people made mistakes. I dug deeper, remembering the way Karen had hovered over my finances last year, asking pointed questions about my will, my savings. At the time I brushed it off, grief makes you generous with excuses. But now it felt like a clue. I invited Lily over that afternoon. She sprawled on my couch, her phone forgotten as we baked her favorite oatmeal cookies. "Mom's been weird lately," she said, licking dough off her fingers. "Always on edge, snapping at Dad." I nodded, stirring the batter, my heart racing. "Weird how?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Lily shrugged, but her words stuck with me. Karen was unraveling, and I needed to know why. I didn't tell Lily what I'd heard. She was too young, too caught in the middle. But I watched her, saw the way her eyes dimmed when she mentioned her mother. Something was off in that house and I was going to find out what. By evening I'd made a list. Not on paper, too risky, but in my head, each item clear as day. Step 1, watch Karen closely. Step 2, protect my assets. Step 3, confront her but not yet. I needed evidence, something concrete to show David, to show Lily. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for them. Karen's whisper wasn't just a jab at me. It was a crack in their family, one I wouldn't let widen. I sipped my sherry, the fire in my chest growing. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over. But peace didn't mean surrender. At 75, I was ready for a fight. I spent the next week playing detective in my own life. Every morning, I'd sit at my kitchen table, the sun filtering through the lace curtains, and piece together what I knew about Karen. She was 42, ambitious, a lawyer who'd clawed her way up at a cutthroat firm. She'd married David 10 years ago, and I'd welcomed her, thinking her drive would balance his dreaminess. But ambition had a shadow side, and I was starting to see it. I remembered the way she'd pushed David to sell my old family cabin last summer, claiming it was a money pit. I'd refused, and her smile had tightened, her eyes cold. Now I wondered if it was more than real estate. Was she after my money? My legacy? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for them to fall into my lap. I started with my finances. I called my lawyer, Margaret, a sharp woman who'd known me since my husband died. I want to review my will, I told her, keeping my voice steady. She didn't ask questions, just booked me for the next day. At her office, I laid it all out. My savings, my house, the cabin, the trust I'd set up for Lily. Margaret raised an eyebrow when I asked her to double-check for any unusual activity. You suspect something? She asked. I shrugged, not ready to voice Karen's whisper aloud. But I told her to tighten the trust, make it ironclad. No one was getting their hands on Lily's future, not while I was breathing. That evening, I drove to David and Karen's house unannounced. Karen hated surprises, which was exactly why I did it. She opened the door, her face a mask of polite shock. "Evelyn, what a surprise," she said, her tone clipped. I smiled, holding up a tray of cookies. "Just thought I'd drop by." David was thrilled, pulling me into a hug, but Karen's eyes flickered with something. Annoyance, maybe fear. I stayed for dinner, watching her every move. She was jumpy, checking her phone constantly, her laugh forced. When David stepped out to take a call, I seized my chance. "You seem stressed, Karen," I said, my voice gentle but probing. She stiffened, her fork pausing midair. "Just work," she muttered, but her eyes didn't meet mine. I let it go, but I knew I'd rattled her. The twist came 2 days later, unexpected and gut-wrenching. Lily called me, her voice trembling. "Gran, can I come over?" When she arrived, her eyes were red, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She collapsed onto my couch and the story spilled out. She'd overheard her parents arguing, Karen screaming about being stuck and needing out. Lily didn't know the details, but she'd heard my name, sharp and bitter on her mother's tongue. "I think Mom hates you," she whispered, and my heart broke for her. I held her, stroking her hair, but inside I was seething. Karen wasn't just coming for me. She was tearing her own daughter apart in the process. I promised Lily she could always come to me no matter what. But as she slept on my couch, I added a new step to my plan. Protect Lily at all costs. I started digging deeper. I remembered Karen's old colleague, Sarah, who'd always been friendly at family gatherings. I called her, casual as ever, asking about Karen's work. Sarah hesitated, then let slip that Karen had been passed over for a promotion. "She's been intense since then," Sarah said, her voice careful. Intense. That word again. I thanked her, my mind racing. Was Karen's resentment tied to her career? Was I just a convenient target for her frustration? Or was there more? I needed something tangible, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked Karen's social media. She was private, but Lily had shown me how to navigate those apps. There, buried in her posts, was a vague rant about entitled elders clogging up her life. It wasn't proof, but it was close enough. I kept my routine normal, not letting Karen suspect I was onto her. I baked, I gardened, I called David to chat about nothing. But every night, I sat in my armchair piecing together my next move. I wasn't just fighting for my pride. I was fighting for my family. Karen's whisper had been a declaration of war, and I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. The confrontation came sooner than I'd planned. It was a Sunday, gray and rainy, the kind of day that made my joints ache but my resolve sharper. David had invited me over for lunch, a rare gesture, and I sensed Karen hadn't been consulted. When I arrived, the house smelled of roasted chicken, but the air was thick with tension. Karen barely looked at me, busying herself in the kitchen, while David chatted about his new project at work. Lily sat quietly, her eyes darting between her parents. I waited, biding my time, until Karen excused herself to check something upstairs. I followed her, my heart pounding but my steps steady. This was it. In the hallway, I caught her by the arm. "Karen," I said, my voice low but firm, "we need to talk." Her eyes widened, a flash of panic before her lawyer's mask slid back into place. "About what?" she asked, too casual. I didn't blink. "About what you said at my birthday. About hoping it was my last one." The color drained from her face, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. For a moment I thought she'd deny it, but then her eyes narrowed and the mask slipped. "You're a burden, Evelyn," she spat, her voice a harsh whisper. "You cling to David, to Lily, to everything. You're holding us back." The words hit like a slap, but I stood taller. "I'm not the one tearing this family apart," I said. "You are." She laughed, a brittle sound. "You think you're so saintly, don't you? The perfect mother, the perfect grandmother. But you're just an old woman who won't let go." I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I kept my voice steady. "If you want me gone, Karen, you'll have to do better than whispers." Her eyes flashed with something dark. Anger maybe, or fear. Before she could respond, David appeared at the top of the stairs, his face confused. "What's going on?" he asked. Karen froze, but I didn't. "Ask your wife," I said, and walked back downstairs, my heart racing but my head clear. Lunch was unbearable. Karen barely spoke, her hands shaking as she passed the potatoes. David kept glancing between us, sensing the rift but not understanding it. Lily stared at her plate, her shoulders hunched. I hated putting her through this, but I couldn't back down. After lunch I pulled David aside. "We need to talk about Karen," I said, my voice gentle but firm. His face clouded, defensive. "Mom, she's stressed. Work's been hard." I shook my head. "It's more than that, David. She's not who you think she is." I didn't tell him about the whisper, not yet. I needed him to see it for himself. That night I found something that changed everything. While helping Lily with her homework at my house, I noticed her phone buzzing. She'd left it open and a text from Karen popped up. "Make sure Gran doesn't snoop in my office." My blood ran cold. Karen had an office at home, a locked room I'd never been allowed in. Why was she worried about me snooping? I didn't say anything to Lily, but when she left, I called Margaret again. "Can you run a background check?" I asked. Discreetly. Margaret didn't hesitate. "On who?" "Karen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt like a traitor, but I had to know. The wait was agony. I kept busy tending my garden, knitting a scarf for Lily, but my mind was on Karen. What was she hiding? Was it just resentment or something bigger? I thought about her late nights, her obsession with my finances, her coldness. Pieces were falling into place, but I didn't have the full picture. Not yet. Margaret called me 3 days later, her voice tight. "Evelyn, you need to see this." I drove to her office, my hands gripping the steering wheel. She slid a folder across her desk, her face grim. Inside was a report on Karen. Nothing criminal, but enough to make my stomach churn. She'd been involved in a shady real estate deal years ago, skimming profits from a client's trust. No charges were filed, but the client had sued, and Karen's firm had settled quietly. "She's smart," Margaret said. "But she's not clean." I thought about the cabin, her push to sell it. Was she planning something similar with my estate? I drove home, the folder burning a hole in my purse. I wanted to confront Karen, to wave the evidence in her face, but I knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed something undeniable, something David couldn't dismiss. I started watching their house, parking down the street like some amateur sleuth. I saw Karen leave late at night, her car speeding off to who knows where. I followed her once, my old sedan struggling to keep up. She went to a storage unit, unlocking it with a key she pulled from her purse. I didn't get close enough to see inside, but I noted the address. It was another piece, another clue. Lily came over again, her face pale. "Mom's been locking her office all the time," she said, her voice small. I heard her on the phone talking about money. She sounded scared. I hugged her, my mind racing. Scared? Of what? Or who? I told Lily to stay with me as much as she wanted, and she nodded, her eyes grateful. I hated that she was caught in this, but I couldn't shield her from the truth forever. That night I made a decision. I'd get into that office. I didn't know how, but I would. The opportunity came unexpectedly. David called, asking me to pick up some documents from their house while they were at Lily's school play. "Karen's out of town," he said, and I seized the chance. I let myself in with the spare key, my heart pounding. The house was quiet, the air heavy with secrets. I found the office door locked, but I'd come prepared. I'd watched enough crime shows to know a bobby pin could work wonders. It took me 20 minutes, my hands shaking, but the lock clicked open. Inside I found files, bank statements, property records, and a draft of a will. My will. But it wasn't the one I'd signed. This one left everything to Karen, with David and Lily cut out. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just wishing me dead, she was planning for it. I took photos of everything, my hands steady despite the rage boiling inside me. I locked the door behind me, left the house, and drove home, my mind racing. Karen wasn't just resentful. She was dangerous. I called Margaret, sending her the photos. "We need to act fast," I said. She agreed, promising to draft a new will and alert the authorities about the forged document. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen would fight back, and I had to be ready. The collapse came fast, like a house of cards in a storm. I invited David and Lily over, leaving Karen out. It was time to show my cards. In my living room, with Lily curled up on the couch and David pacing, I laid out everything. The whisper, the background check, the forged will. David's face went from confusion to disbelief to anger. "Mom, this can't be right," he said, but his voice wavered. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look surprised. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. I handed David the photos, watching his world crumble. He sat down hard, his hands shaking as he stared at the forged will. "Why would she do this?" he asked, his voice breaking. I didn't have an answer, but I held his hand, my heart aching for him. Karen came home that night to find David waiting. I wasn't there, but Lily told me later how it went down. David confronted her. The photos spread out on the kitchen table. Karen tried to lie, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but David wasn't buying it. "You forged her will," he said, his voice cold. Karen's mask cracked, her voice rising as she accused me of turning her family against her. "She's the problem," she screamed, but David didn't budge. He told her to leave, to pack a bag and go. Lily said it was the first time she'd seen her father stand up to her mother. Karen didn't go quietly. She called me the next day, her voice venomous. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You're nothing but a meddling old woman." I let her rant, my heart steady. "Karen," I said when she paused, "you underestimated me. And you underestimated David." I hung up, my hands trembling but my resolve firm. She moved out that week, renting an apartment downtown. David filed for divorce, and Lily started spending more time with me, her laughter slowly returning. But the victory felt hollow. I'd protected my family, but at what cost? David was broken, grappling with the betrayal. Lily was stronger, but she'd lost the mother she'd known. I spent nights wondering if I'd pushed too hard, if I could have found another way. But then I'd remember Karen's whisper, her cold calculation, and I knew I'd had no choice. I'd fought for my life, for my family, and I'd won. Healing took time. David threw himself into work, trying to rebuild his sense of self. Lily spent weekends with me, baking, gardening, talking about everything and nothing. We didn't mention Karen often, but her shadow lingered. I focused on them, on being the anchor they needed. I rewrote my will, making sure Lily's trust was untouchable, and I sold the cabin, not because Karen had wanted it, but because it was time to let go. The money went into a college fund for Lily, a promise for her future. I started volunteering at a local senior center, sharing my story with women my age who felt invisible, dismissed. "You're never too old to fight," I told them, and their eyes lit up seeing themselves in me. I wasn't just Evelyn anymore. I was a woman who'd stared down betrayal and come out stronger. My 76th birthday was quiet, just David, Lily, and me eating cake in my backyard. No whispers, no tension, just love. Lily gave me a drawing, a portrait of us together, her smile wide. David hugged me, his eyes clear for the first time in months. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he said, and I cried, the good kind of tears. Karen faded from our lives. I heard she'd moved to another city, chasing a new job, a new start. I didn't wish her ill, I just wished her gone. My family was whole again, scarred but stronger. I'd learned something at 75. Age doesn't dim your fire. It sharpens it. Looking back, I see the woman I was at 75. Not frail, not fading, but fierce. Karen's whisper was a spark, igniting a strength I'd forgotten I had. I fought not just for myself, but for David, for Lily, for the family we'd built. Life doesn't stop at 75 or 80 or beyond. It's a series of battles, each one teaching you who you are. I learned I was a protector, a survivor, a woman who wouldn't be erased. My story isn't just about a birthday gone wrong. It's about standing up, no matter how old you are, no matter how heavy the odds. I sit in my garden now, the roses blooming red and fierce like my heart. Lily's laughter drifts from the house, David's voice steady beside her. We're not perfect, but we're together. And that's enough. I'm 76 now, and I'm not done. Not by a long shot.